Hey everyone, welcome back to Life Turns, where stories twist in ways no one sees coming. Today's story isn't about gifts or glittering lights, it's about something darker hiding under the shine of Christmas's family. So grab your coffee, settle in, because what I'm about to tell you still hurts every time I think about it. It was early December, the kind of cold morning when the world feels soft and peaceful. I remember the smell of cinnamon candles, the sound of soft Christmas songs playing in the kitchen, and my mom humming along while decorating cookies. On the outside, everything looked perfect. But behind all that warmth, there was something else, something that made my chest tighten whenever I thought about Christmas. Because every year, the same thing happened. My parents celebrated, and I just watched. Growing up, Christmas was supposed to be magic, but for me, it felt more like punishment. I'd see other kids brag about gifts and family dinners, and I'd force a smile like I understood that feeling. But deep down, I didn't. My parents always had an excuse. Money's tight this year, or you're old enough to understand that Christmas isn't about gifts. But somehow, they always had money for their own plans, fancy wine, expensive decorations, and matching outfits for pictures they'd post online. This year, I told myself it would be different. I was 20 now, not a kid, not someone they could just brush off. I offered to help with dinner, decorate, whatever they needed. Mom smiled and said, "Of course, honey, this year we'll do it together." Her voice was soft, reassuring. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to think maybe she really meant it. A week later, I came home from my part-time job, tired and hungry. The house smelled like roasted turkey, butter, and spices, but Christmas was still 3 days away. I froze by the door. I could hear my parents in the kitchen, whispering. Their voices were low, careful, but not enough. Dad said, "We'll serve the guests first, then us. She can have what's left. She doesn't eat much anyway." My heart stopped. Mom replied, "It's better that way. She doesn't appreciate good food. Every year she complains. Let's just keep it peaceful this time." I didn't even realize tears were running down my face. I backed away from the door, trying not to make a sound. My hands were shaking, my breath felt stuck in my throat. They were talking about me, their own daughter. Not a stranger, not a guest. Me. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, replaying their words again and again. She can have what's left. Like I was a burden, an afterthought, something they had to feed out of obligation. I tried to come up with reasons, excuses, maybe they were joking, maybe I heard it wrong. But deep down, I knew. I knew exactly what they meant. The next morning, I went downstairs, pretending everything was normal. Mom was making breakfast. She looked up and smiled, "Morning, sweetheart. Want pancakes?" I almost said yes, but my stomach turned. I just shook my head and said, "I'll eat later." She didn't notice the crack in my voice. For the next few days, I stayed quiet. They decorated the tree, wrapped gifts, planned the menu. They were excited, laughing together, and I was there, just existing. I felt invisible. I helped hang the ornaments, but no one thanked me. I set the table, but they never asked if I'd sit at it. On Christmas Eve, I made up my mind. I wasn't going to sit there and pretend anymore. I wasn't going to smile while they ate first and handed me scraps like some charity case. I decided to cancel Christmas, at least, my version of it. That night, while they were watching a movie, I went to my room and started packing. I put in a few clothes, my journal, some cash I'd saved from work. I didn't know where I was going yet, I just knew I couldn't stay there. I looked at the lights outside my window, flickering in red and green. People were laughing in the street, kids running with snowballs, families together. It should have felt comforting, but it just made the emptiness inside me grow bigger. Around midnight, I heard them laughing downstairs. The sound used to make me happy, now it made my chest ache. I grabbed my bag, opened my door, and quietly walked down the stairs. The tree lights were still on, casting shadows across the walls. My mom's favorite ornament, a crystal angel, shimmered under the light. For a second, I wanted to touch it, to remember some piece of the love that used to exist between us. But I didn't. When I stepped outside, the air hit my face, cold and sharp. It felt real, like the first breath I'd taken in months. I didn't have a plan, but I had freedom. I walked to the bus stop and waited. The town was quiet, covered in snow, like time had paused. I looked back at the house once, just once. The same house where I grew up, laughed, cried, dreamed, and now, walked away from. As the bus came closer, I told myself this wasn't running away. This was reclaiming something I'd lost a long time ago, self-respect. The bus doors opened, warm air rushing out, and I stepped inside. The driver gave me a small nod. I sat near the window, watching the lights fade behind me. For the first time in years, I felt at peace. But peace doesn't last forever. The next morning, my phone started buzzing non-stop. Calls. Messages. My mom's number, my dad's number, even a few relatives. I didn't answer. Then I saw a text from Mom. Where are you? Dinner's ready. Everyone's asking for you. I stared at the screen. My chest tightened again, but this time, not with sadness. With clarity. I typed one message back. I canceled Christmas. When I hit send on that message, my hands were shaking, but my heart felt strangely steady. I didn't know what I expected, anger, guilt, maybe silence. But within minutes, my phone lit up again. Mom's texts started pouring in. What do you mean canceled? Stop being dramatic. Come home right now, people are asking where you are. Each message hit harder than the last. None of them said, we're sorry. None said, we love you. It was all about appearances, how my absence made them look. That's when it finally clicked. They never really cared about the celebration itself. They cared about control, about the image they wanted everyone else to see. The bus kept rolling through snowy streets, Christmas lights flashing in reflections across the window. Families were out together, walking hand in hand, holding gifts, laughing. I pressed my forehead against the glass, watching them fade into the distance. That's what I always wanted, not money, not gifts, just warmth. Real warmth. I spent that night at a small, cheap motel on the edge of town. The room was old, with flickering lights and a heater that sounded like it was gasping for breath. But somehow, I felt safer there than I ever did at home. I ordered a slice of pizza, sat cross-legged on the bed, and turned on the TV. Christmas movies were playing, happy families, laughter, love. I didn't cry. I thought I would, but I didn't. I just sat there, silent, numb but free. Around midnight, my phone rang again. Dad this time. I almost declined it, but something in me wanted to hear what he had to say. I answered quietly, hello? His voice was cold. Where are you? Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is for us? People are asking questions. I took a deep breath. I heard you, Dad. I heard what you said about me, how I'd eat after everyone else. You made me feel like I was less than family. He paused. You're overreacting. It was just a joke. You always take things too personally. A joke. The word stung more than the whisper I'd overheard days ago. A joke doesn't make someone feel invisible, I said softly. A joke doesn't make your own kid pack up and leave on Christmas. There was silence. Then he sighed, frustrated. We don't have time for your drama. Just come home. I hung up. I didn't yell, didn't cry, didn't beg. I just ended the call, and with it, the version of myself that kept forgiving people who never meant their apologies. The next morning, I walked to a nearby cafe. It smelled like fresh coffee and baked bread, and for the first time, someone greeted me with a genuine smile. Merry Christmas, the barista said as she handed me a cup of cocoa. I nodded, whispering, "You too." That small kindness broke something open inside me. I realized how starved I was, not for food, but for compassion. As I sat by the window, sipping my cocoa, I thought about my childhood Christmases, the fake smiles, the way I'd sit at the end of the table waiting for leftovers, pretending it didn't hurt. I remembered the year I was 10 when Mom gave me a used sweater wrapped in paper that had already been torn before. She told me it was still good as new. I believed her because I wanted to. But now I knew better. By noon, my phone had stopped buzzing. Maybe they'd given up. Or maybe they were too busy posting pictures of their perfect family dinner to care. Either way, I didn't check. I wasn't going to chase their love anymore. Instead, I decided to take a walk. The streets were quiet now, snowflakes drifting down like tiny feathers. Every house I passed glowed warm with laughter and light. I should have felt lonely, but strangely, I didn't. It was the first Christmas I spent alone, but also the first one where I didn't have to pretend. I stopped near a small park, watching kids build a snowman with red scarves and carrot noses. Their parents clapped and cheered. I smiled, not with envy, but with hope. Maybe not all families were like mine. Maybe somewhere, someday, I'd build my own, one where no one had to feel like an afterthought. That night, I went back to the motel and wrote in my journal. The words came fast, like they'd been waiting to escape for years. I wrote about every Christmas that broke me, every silence that hurt, every fake smile that I forced. I wrote about how it felt to walk away, and how terrifying, but freeing, it was. When I finished, I signed at the bottom, "This Christmas, I chose myself." The next morning, I woke up to find an envelope slipped under my door. I frowned, picked it up, no name, just from Mom. My heart raced as I tore it open. Inside was a short letter, written in her handwriting. I stared at that line for a long time. "Dinner won't start until you're here." The same people who once said I'd eat last were now waiting for me. But could I go back? Could I forgive that easily? I folded the letter, holding it tight in my hand. My eyes burned with tears I hadn't allowed myself to cry. Maybe it was guilt, or hope, or both. I didn't decide right away. I needed to think, to breathe, to figure out if I was ready. Because forgiveness isn't simple, especially when the people who hurt you are the ones who raised you. That night, I sat by the window again, watching snow fall under the streetlight. My phone buzzed once more, this time, a photo. It was my family around the table, but there was an empty chair in the middle, right where I used to sit. Mom had written, "Still waiting." And for the first time, I didn't feel angry. I just felt seen. Maybe too late, maybe imperfectly, but seen. I stared at that picture for what felt like forever. My family sitting there, the table full of food, the empty chair at the center, it was more powerful than anything my parents could have said. For the first time, they'd left space for me. But I still couldn't shake the fear. What if it was just another performance? Another show for the neighbors, another guilt trip to make me come home? The next morning, I packed my bag again, but this time I wasn't running away. I needed to face them. Not for them, for me. I needed to see if the people who raised me could finally see me not as an inconvenience, but as someone who mattered. The walk back to the house felt endless. Snow crunched under my boots, the sky was gray, and every step made my heart pound harder. When I reached the porch, I hesitated. The wreath was still hanging on the door, perfect and pretty, just like always. I stood there for a full minute, breathing in the cold air before knocking softly. Mom opened the door. Her face looked tired, eyes puffy, cheeks pale, like she hadn't slept either. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then she whispered, "You came." I nodded. "Yeah. I came." She stepped aside, motioning me in. The warmth from the fireplace hit my face instantly, and for a moment, I remembered what it used to feel like to belong. The dining table was still set. The same dishes, the same decorations, even the same smell of roasted turkey. But this time, one thing was different, the empty plate at the head of the table. Mine. Dad walked in quietly. His usual confident posture was gone. "We shouldn't have said what we did," he said without looking directly at me. "It was stupid. We thought it was funny, but it wasn't." I wanted to scream, to tell them how those words had shattered something in me. But I didn't. I just looked at them, both standing there awkwardly, and said, "Do you even know what it feels like? To be your child and still feel like an outsider? To watch you eat, laugh, celebrate, and pretend it doesn't hurt?" Mom's lips trembled. "We didn't mean for you to feel that way. We thought you didn't care about holidays anymore." I shook my head slowly. "I didn't care because I learned not to. You made me believe I didn't deserve it." The room went silent. You could hear the fire crackle, the clock ticking. Then Mom stepped forward and hugged me. It wasn't the usual polite hug. It was tight, desperate, like she was afraid I'd disappear again. "I'm sorry," she whispered into my shoulder. "We forgot you're still our child, even if you're grown. We were wrong." Something inside me finally cracked open. I hugged her back, but the tears that came weren't just sadness, they were release. We sat down together, the three of us, around that same table that once made me feel so small. The food was still warm. Dad handed me the first plate, saying softly, "You eat first." That one gesture said more than any apology could. It wasn't about the food, it was about being seen, being included, being enough. For the first time in years, we talked. Really talked. No fake smiles, no pretending. They asked me about my job, my dreams, my fears. I told them everything, how lonely it felt growing up, how I used to watch from the sidelines, wishing they'd notice me. Mom cried quietly as I spoke. "We were so focused on appearances," she said. "We wanted everything to look perfect that we forgot to make it feel perfect." I looked at her and said, "I don't want perfection. I just want honesty." Later that night, after dinner, we sat by the fire. The lights on the tree glowed softly, and for once, the silence between us wasn't heavy, it was peaceful. I told them about the letter, how I'd almost thrown it away, how scared I was to believe it was real. Dad leaned forward. "We can't fix the past, but we can start over. If you'll let us." I nodded. Starting over doesn't mean forgetting. It means learning. Mom smiled faintly, her eyes red but warm. "Then let's learn together." That night, when I went to bed in my old room, I looked around at everything I'd once hated, the posters, the small bed, the cracked window, and it all felt different now. Not perfect. Just real. The next morning, I woke up to laughter coming from the kitchen. For a split second, panic shot through me, old memories flashing back. But when I walked in, Mom was there, cooking breakfast, and the first thing she said was, "Sit down, honey. Eat first." I smiled. For the first time, Christmas wasn't about gifts or traditions. It was about acknowledgement. Healing. It was about the small, quiet moments that rebuild broken bonds. Later that afternoon, as I packed to leave again, this time to return to my apartment, Mom handed me a small box. "Open it when you're ready," she said. When I got home that night, I opened it. Inside was that same old crystal angel from the tree, the one I used to stare at as a kid. Attached was a note, "For the daughter we should have seen sooner. Thank you for not giving up on us completely." I held that angel in my hands, tears streaming down my face. Maybe I couldn't erase all the hurt. Maybe forgiveness wasn't instant. But that moment reminded me that even broken families can learn to rebuild, if both sides are willing to try. Christmas will never be the same again, and maybe that's okay. Because this time, it's not about pretending everything's perfect. It's about being real, being honest, and remembering that sometimes, walking away is what finally brings people closer. As I turned off the lights and placed the angel by my window, The snow started falling again, soft, silent, peaceful. And for the first time in my life, Christmas didn't feel like something I had to survive. It felt like something I could finally live. So to anyone out there listening, if you've ever felt unseen, unheard, unloved during the holidays, I hope my story reminds you that your worth isn't measured by how others treat you. Sometimes, the best gift you can give yourself is peace. And that, my friends, was the year I canceled Christmas and found myself instead.